Hello everyone, this is part 29 of What If Naruto Was Madara's Brother, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Land of Lightning. The morning rays of the sun had barely started to enlighten the vast mountains of the land when she heard the familiar horn. Her eyes widened in shock and hope as she dashed out of her tent. She was not alone in her surprise as the entire camp was trying to reach the outskirts. Fortunately for her, men and women parted a clear path when they realized who she was and even bowed, but she didn't pay them any attention. Her quick sprint made her reach the edge of their camp more swiftly than she imagined, where she found her eldest brother waiting alongside Hanzo, Mifune and the fox. She tried to see any form of the approaching party, but the fog hindered her vision. Yet they had all heard the familiar horn, which was clearly meant to inform them all of the approaching party's march. What made her heart sink was the crestfallen look on her brother's face. Hashirama's lips were trembling and his eyes were getting moist. Tsunade knew her brother better than most and was aware about his powerful sensory abilities that not only allowed him to gauge the chakra, numbers and power, but also the emotions of people. "Brother," she whispered, as she laid a hand on his shoulder. Tsunade gulped when he looked at her with such a saddened gaze that did not ease her worries but only increased them. To make it worse, the flag of the three-headed dragon banner finally emerged out of the fog and she saw the distant silhouettes of men approaching. They had received a brief letter stating the arrival of the king along with his Kingsguard force. No other details were mentioned, which had not eased anyone, but the news of the king's return sent the men in a cheer. That feeling was soon replaced by dread and horror when they saw barely 200 fighters approaching when 7,000 had gone to Izu. The best of their fighters and barely anyone had returned. Tsunade gasped as she saw most of the ninjas looked very weak, tired, and few were even injured. Still, they were keeping the discipline and marching under the lead of Shisui Uchiha and the other three Kingsguard. Her heart started beating faster as she saw neither her husband or her beloved brother among the group. She looked at Hashirama and if possible he looked even more heartbroken now, with tears falling from his eyes. The fox suddenly bolted forward and charged towards the group. Both Senjus and the people around them were shocked when the fox forced the approaching Kingsguard fighters to make way, and it was only then they saw a group of men carrying a stretcher with a heavily wounded man in it, who was constantly being looked over by Mito Uzumaki. A strangled scream left the fox's lips, one which was soon echoed by Tsunade as she saw the familiar body lying numbly on that stretcher. She ran towards him and none tried to get in her way. When she reached him, a gasp escaped her lips as she took in the state of her husband. The king's entire body was wrapped in bandages, and when Tsunade cast a quick diagnostic hand over it, she realized almost all his ribs were broken. There were second-degree burns on his C and many of his internal muscles were badly fried, especially the ones near the heart, as if he was struck by thunder itself. His once beautiful brown locks had now turned completely white, his face as pale as a corpse. But the most disturbing fact was revealed the moment she touched him. She felt nothing. His heart was barely beating, much to her relief, but in every other sense he was S. Every shinobi always had an aura of energy in them which always allowed other shinobi to determine easily their mortal status even if they were pretending to be S. Naruto's energy was almost non-existent, as if something had sucked it away from him cruelly. She glanced at Mito to see her Uzumaki friend give her a sad gaze. Tears fell from Tsunade's eyes as she knelt and laid a tender hand on his cheek. She remembered their fight and could not help but lament the fact it ever happened. If it hadn't, then perhaps Naruto would have never left for Izu. He wouldn't have to suffer like this, and that burden was heavy for her to bear. Tsunade, despite her aggrieved state, heard her brother's voice as he confronted Shisui Uchiha. "So few of you have returned," commented Hashirama sadly. Shisui grimaced as he saw the entire army staring at him. Almost every one of these people had a friend, relative, lover or family member in the Kingsguard force, and they were all looking at him anxiously for their news. Guilt threatened to overwhelm him, for after Naruto, he had been the commander of the Kingsguard and all those deaths were his responsibility. It was one thing to watch his men and be turned into those monsters, but a whole different and painful matter when he saw their fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts. They were all staring at him, but no words left his lips. He could not stop tears from arriving in his eyes despite Hashirama Senju looking at him with an understanding gaze. The Uzumaki are safe and sent to our nation. Many more of the King's Guard fighters went with them to keep them safe, but we did suffer heavy losses, reported Itachi calmly. Relief flooded through Shisui, and he hoped his thankful gaze conveyed his eternal growth to his silent friend. Itachi was a very observant man and had clearly realized the fact that if the full truth of the disastrous defeat was revealed, this army might very well butcher them right here. Consequences be damned. The sight of their heavily wounded king near death's door would only encourage their outrage. So he had given them a brief of the truth. Despite their inability to save Uzu, they had managed to save thousands of Uzumaki, and those King's Guard fighters who had survived were indeed sent to the Land of Fire by Shisui alongside the Uzumaki refugees. His statement regarding heavy losses combined with the news of many King's Guard going to their homeland was enough to give majority of the ninjas hope that their loved ones were still alive. Some of the more rational and paranoid people knew better but thought it better to keep their mouth shut when Kagami and Takeshi unleashed a mild intent warning them not to do anything stupid. Just when they thought they had avoided a major disaster, the queen approached them. "Where is Lady Naori? Where is Atama? Where is my brother?" asked Tsunade worriedly as she stared directly at Shisui, who had become a good friend of hers over the past few weeks. His eyes said it all, and Tsunade felt her heart stop. The last hope in her and Hashirama's heart was shattered when Shisui steeled himself and looked at them with a gaze full of grief and pride. They did the duty. Land of Wind. Tobirama Senju sat alone. His tears had long since dried up, but the grief he felt over the loss of his brother still burned painfully in his heart. Atama had always been the kindest among his siblings, and unlike him the boy had never truly hated Uchihas despite the fact that they Kawarama, something for which Tobirama had never forgiven them. "We are brothers, Uchiha and Senju. I hope one day you can also make peace with it like I have, brother." He had been so outraged when Atama had said those words to him during Tsunade's wedding. He had called the boy weak and even a traitor to their clan, but Atama had only given him an understanding look and never said anything more. If only he had known that was the last time he would have talked to his brother. Atama gave his life saving Uzumaki, who were staunch allies of the Senju. Tobirama could not be more proud of his brother, as the letter mentioned that it was because of Atama and his men that many Uzumaki still lived. Many other brave warriors from different clans, including Naori Uchiha and the king himself, had to save the redheads. He had only interacted with Naruto on a handful times, but the Uchiha always had an aura of mystery around him. Perhaps there had been more to him than Tobirama had imagined, but now he would never know. The news of the king's death had spread like a tidal wave across their camp. Despite the reservations of many, the different ninja clans were staying united only because Naruto was king and Tsunade his wife. It was the perfect union of Uchiha and Senju which brought the remaining clans together. With the king's, nobody was certain about the future and where their allegiances lay. Madara had isolated himself in his tent since the past day and was not taking any visitors. The aura of darkness and hate radiating from his place of location was enough to make anyone brave or stupid enough to approach their army leader a dangerous move. This isolation by Madara had been the final trigger, and now the staunch Senju loyalists were openly whispering dangerous things among their clans and allies. Tobirama was aware of their talks, having been their leader once before this war started. The most important figures were Hiro Inuzuka, Tori Yamanaka, and one of the civilian generals. The Inuzuka had always hated the Uchiha because of their inferiority complex and arrogance, which was inherited by the current clan head. Hiro had been a mad dog being kept on a leash only because of Tobirama's firm command, but with the king's, all bets were off. Tori Yamanaka was the widow of Atama Yamanaka, the former Yamanaka clan head whom Naruto had burned alive. The vengeful woman had given such a cold smile when she heard the news of the king's death and subtly nudged Hiro to initiate the coup. The civilian general, Hayate, was just a greedy man who wanted to gain more wealth for himself by siding with the powerful Senju. All three of them were rallying men to their cause under the banner of supporting Tsunade as their rightful queen. Many Senju loyalists were flocking to their cause already. Technically, with Naruto's, Madara was the most likely candidate to become king, but there was too much bad blood between the man and Senjus for them to claim him as their king. Being Hokage was one thing, but their supreme leader. It would be a cold day in hell before anyone accepted that. Surprisingly, the coup leaders had run into a major trouble. Many Uchiha had in this campaign, leaving only a few hundred left to defend Madara. Even Tobi Shimura was injured, but his clan fighters, however few remaining, would defend Madara to death. Rei Namikaze was also a fierce leader, and her clansmen had command over the aerial units which could wreak havoc. Most importantly, Sasuke Sarutobi had balked at the idea of a coup. The Monkey Clan head had snarled furiously at such a disgusting and illogical plan, since Madara had made quite the impression on the clan head with his tactics and leadership, enough to make Sasuke spit at the idea of Madara in the back. He had told his allies in clear terms that while he would not outright tell Madara of this treachery, but if they truly rebelled, then Sasuke and his clansmen would defend their Hokage. Fighting against Shimura and Namikaze, even few Uchiha, was one thing. But the Sarutobi currently made up the largest contingent of their forces. They were the best fighters after Uchiha and Senju warriors. Whoever they chose to support would be the clear winner. That was not even taking into account Madara's fury. The man was a dragon in all but appearance, and his power was intimidating. It had only become more darker and 10 times strong since the ill news of the king's death arrived. If provoked, Madara would likely burn everyone alive in his pent-up anger and grief. Most importantly, Tobirama did not want to hurt the Uchiha who had strangely become a dear comrade. Never in his wildest dreams had he imagined himself coming to respect and admire someone like Madara. But the Uchiha had gained his trust with his actions. Madara was not a perfect man and had his faults, but with Naruto he was their best bet to maintain the peace. Nobody in this army would trust Tajima, but these men had followed Madara, and despite their losses, Madara had always led them to victory. The man had not lost a single battle. A feat not even the deceased king could boast of. No, he will succumb to grief and madness with the loss of his brother. You must put him down for the sake of peace. Tobirama gripped his head as that treacherous voice whispered in his mind again. He fought with every ounce of his power, but it made his sea burn with pain. He hastily walked towards one corner of his tent and glanced at his reflection in the mirror. Removing his shirt, he saw that his entire sea was now a picture of darkness. The whispering was becoming more and more stronger, to the point that it had stopped Tobirama from raising any objections or asking for more time like he had in the past to the coup leaders. His resistance was failing, and he knew it won't be long before this darkness took him. He cursed the day this evil sunk its claws into him, remembering very well the moment this power had whispered in his head for the first time during his captivity with the Uchihas. It was before Hashirama agreed to Naruto's term, before that his Uchiha guards had taken great pleasure in starving him, mildly teasing him, and making his wounds worse. Tobirama had been shivering in pain and was lucid at best. The voice had whispered to him, then promising to take away his pain, and in his desperation he had foolishly accepted it. The pain had went away as his wounds were healed, much to the shock of his cruel guards. Naruto did find about those acts later and apparently punished the culprits. After that, the king had made sure to post more loyal guards who would not tease Tobirama at least. But it was too late. No. He felt the dormant power within him unleash its full fury at his defiance, but was surprised when Tobirama's own cold fury clashed against it. Their wills clashed against each other viciously, and Tobirama's eyes widened as he caught glimpses of the creature's memory. With a silent hiss, he pushed him back into the dark corners of his mind. Tobirama panted harshly and fell to his knees when the darkness receded, if only for now. He felt very tired and exhausted, but there was no time to waste. Struggling, he got back on his feet, grabbed a nearby paper and hastily wrote his message. Steeling himself, he called for one of his Senju guards and made sure to look his usual stoic self. Take this to Lord Sasuke. Don't give it to anyone else under any circumstances, instructed Tobirama. Yes, my lord, agreed the guard, as he took the letter and went away to carry out his orders. As soon as the guard was gone, Tobirama hissed when the pain in his sea started to flare again. It was ordering him to do something treacherous. The pain was becoming so worse that he wanted to do the task and rest, but the rational side of him knew very well that if he came Madara, then their army would be destroyed. Grabbing Raijin no Ken, he hastily donned his armor before rushing out of his tent, only to disappear into the vastness of the desert. In his haste, he failed to see two figures following after him. Sasuke Sarutobi had been very tense ever since he discovered the treacherous coup by his allies against Madara. To say they were fools would be an understatement. Granted, Madara had fewer loyalists on his side left now, and if the Senju and their allies united, then they could overthrow him. Maybe. But the fact that they currently had thousands of prisoners from the land of Earth in their camp only made the situation more volatile. Those bastards would definitely use this coup to either escape or simply s them all in the chaos. They had thousands in numbers, and that was not even taking into account their injured comrades currently being treated upon by Senju medics. Sasuke held no personal love for Madara, but he respected the man. At first he had his doubts about the eldest son of Tajima Uchiha, but regardless of his personality issues, Madara was a good leader who actually cared for his people. The king's death had hit him hard and had led to his isolation, but if those fools tried to attack a wounded dragon, then they were all destined to burn. Naruto might give second chances to his enemies, Madara gave none. What had baffled Sasuke was Tobirama's lack of either support or resistance to this foolish coup. His lord was acting strangely ever since news of Atama's death came. More than once Sasuke had sensed a darkness in Tobirama and had seen the young Senju fighting something within himself. When he asked, Tobirama had rebuffed his claim and said he was fine, but Sasuke didn't believe him. Yet he knew that until Tobirama gave the final permission, the traitors would not make their move, for they feared and respected the white-haired Senju. It was why Sasuke was surprised when one of Tobirama's personal guards came rushing into his tent and wordlessly handed him a letter that bore Tobirama's personal seal. Sasuke quickly opened it up and read the dreaded order he had been waiting for. Whatever his personal issues and opposition to the coup plotters, he was bound to obey Tobirama's command regardless of his personal opinions. And his lord had given him a command. Sasuke burnt the letter and grimly looked at the lone messenger. Prepare the men. Tobirama knelt on the cool sand of the desert and glanced at the moon shining in the sky. More than half of his body was consumed in the darkness, and he could feel the last of his control failing. You cannot fight the darkness. Tobirama gave a silent scream as another pain terrorized his body. It sucked away every happy memory from his mind, filling it with nothing but hate and anger. Even now you fade. He coughed and panted harshly. One of his eyes started to see things differently, much to his horror. One flame alone in the dark. His trembling hands etched towards his holy sword. The blade of lightning made by Ashura himself had always been passed among his descendants and been a source of pride and power. As soon as he grasped the sword, he felt a serene chakra rushing to his body. So full of warmth and love. The two enemies clashed fiercely, and Tobirama distantly saw an older version of his brother emerge from the sword before merging with him. Hashirama. Tsunade. Atama. Kawarama. Father. Mother. I am the son of Butsuma, descendant of Ashura, wielder of Raijin, whispered Tobirama fiercely. The darkness roared furiously inside of him, but was momentarily stunned as Raijin no Ken unleashed a bolt of lightning straight across the darkened skies. Shakily, Tobirama stood up on his knees and glanced at his flashing sword. It was calling to him like a mother would to its terrified child. Grabbing the weapon firmly, he steeled himself as he now knew what he had to do. The darkness had too strong a hold on him, but at least this way he would not be used to hurt his comrades and become a traitor to his people. He could not betray Atama's memory and could not betray his king who for their people. He raised Raijin no Ken, pointing it right across his heart. He was about to plunge the sword and end the darkness threatening to consume him along with his own life when two shadows whizzed past him. One of them firmly grabbed him from behind while the other swiftly stole his sword. Tobirama protested weakly through his hazy vision, but his captors paid him no attention. Hazily, he saw Raijin no Ken being raised high in the air, making the sword glow even more brightly just before it came down right at his head. He closed his eyes knowing it was his end either way and screamed in agony when instead of taking off his head the sword sent a monstrous stream of holy lightning inside his body. An inhuman scream echoed across the vast desert, one more powerful and painful than Tobirama's. Go back to the shadows. Tobirama barely heard the feminine voice screaming that command fiercely and felt the darkness lose hold of him. More and more of his body could be felt by him again as the dark power started to recede. The one holding him firmly didn't slacken his grip even when Tobirama thrashed violently. The female holding the holy sword pointed the blade right at Tobirama's forehead. A shockwave was unleashed and Tobirama sighed in relief when he felt something be violently pushed out of his body. He gracelessly collapsed on the ground as his captor let go of his grip. The darkness screamed in pain as it crashed violently on the desert sand, however it soon started to rise to take the shape of dark creature in humanoid form with demonic yellow eyes. It gave out an inhuman scream as its first enemy approached him. Danzo, son of Tobi Shimura. Tobirama blinked in surprise as he watched through his hazy vision. The Shimura heir was part of Madara's personal guard. What the hell was he doing here? The sight of Mikoto Uchiha wielding Raijin no Ken in one hand and her own sword in the other surprised Tobirama even more. What was the commander of Madara's personal guard along with her fellow brother in arms doing here of all places? Why were they not with their sworn leader? Now that he looked at the creature and was free from his control, he remembered its name. Zetsu. It moved too quickly evading Danzo's strikes but was still reeling from the forceful eviction from Tobirama's body. It also looked injured if the black bee oozing out of his head was any indicator. Even in this state, it cast an aura of death and misery making Tobirama's worst memories haunt him again. He saw Itama and Kawaramas S in front of him, soon'd be burnt alive, and Hashirama be consumed in darkness. It made him scream and Danzo did the same as he was brought to his knees as he saw his own father S. Mikoto fell to her knees as she was assaulted by the vision of how Naruto must have S. Alone, wounded and in pain. He called out to her for help but she could not reach him in time. Tears fell from her eyes as she watched the man she loved S in front of her, unable to do anything. Zetsu grinned victoriously as he saw his enemies trembling in despair and horror. Foolish humans. He walked towards Danzo and conjured a spear made up of his dark chakra in his hand. The boy was thrashing in pain and calling out for his father. It was better to end the fool's misery. He brought his spear down only to have it blocked by the cursed lightning sword of Ashura. Surprised, he saw Mikoto was the one opposing him and was momentarily stunned by the level of hatred and anger in the woman's eyes. He had known this woman had loved the king and surely news of his death combined with the dreaded vision would be enough to make her crumble. Instead, it had only awakened the dragon within her. For our king, she yelled. Zetsu quickly stepped back as the fierce Uchiha attacked him viciously. He quickly conjured roots of the ground to trap her only to have them be s apart by Mikoto's common sword. Her skill in Kenjutsu was just as good as the original members of the King's Guard. Trapped, Zetsu tried to sink into the ground in order to escape but Mikoto had other plans as she unleashed a massive bolt of lightning from Tobirama's sword that sent Zetsu flying away. Not giving the creature any time to resist, Mikoto moved in. Zetsu parried her horizontal S with his dark spear and cursed when Raijin no Ken didn't crumble like other swords. Mikoto kicked him brutally in the knees making it yell out in pain. As he fell to his knees, Zetsu's eyes widened when the Uchiha woman raised Ashura's sword. Disappear. Mikoto brought down the lightning sword cleaving Zetsu from head to toe. The inhuman creature of darkness screamed in horrified agony as its dark chakra was literally consumed by Ashura's lingering power in the holy sword. His body was torn apart as well. In a few seconds, Zetsu was literally evaporated from the world of men. Mikoto panted harshly as she fought off the rush of adrenaline before focusing her attention on the remaining two people in the area. Danzo had shaken off the genjutsu effect and had now crawled towards Tobirama. She quickly went towards the two men. Lord Senju, she called out to him, watching Danzo shake the white-haired man. What are you doing here? Asked Tobirama groggily, as Danzo and Mikoto helped him stand up. Much to his relief, Mikoto gave him back his holy sword and Tobirama felt his power return to him along with the very warm chakra. It healed his minor injuries and cleared the last cobwebs of darkness that Zetsu had left. Relieved, he looked at the two young Uchiha loyalists for answers. Our Hokage sent us to help you, said Danzo frankly. How did Madara even know what was happening to me? Asked Tobirama in shock. We don't know. He only said that he saw a great darkness that was consuming you and instructed us to save Lord Hashirama's last brother at all costs, answered Mikoto. Tobirama was left speechless. Even in his grief at losing his last sibling, Madara still had enough strength and will left in him to help his best friend's little brother. Hashirama had always said that the day Madara's last brother would be the moment when Madara gave up on everything. But he didn't. A small smile came on his lips. Maybe just maybe their world was not doomed to fall even after their king's death. Thank you, said Tobirama gratefully, earning brief nods from the two Hokage guards. Before they could decide on the next course of action, they were silenced when Tobirama went very pale. Wordlessly, the Senju ran towards the northern direction, making Mikoto and Danzo curse but follow after him. They ran for several long minutes, with Tobirama being bombarded by pleas to stop and other questions. He quickly silenced the two younger ninjas when they climbed on top of a sand dome and saw the vision waiting for them. A wave of darkness was charging. Thousands upon thousands of deceased sand and earth ninjas and civilians. Men, women, children, even large scorpions, all heading straight for the direction of Madara's camp. Is this the enemy our king faced? Asked Danzo in horror. It would appear so, answered Tobirama grimly. I see many Kaguyas among them, along with few of those white-haired bastards. Are they the Otsutsuki that Shisui warned us about? Asked Mikoto worriedly. If these monsters had managed to kill someone powerful like Naruto, then what chance did they have? Tobirama saw the skies darken with clouds hiding the moon. Vast sandstorms had started to appear across the entire desert that would easily create panic among Madara's camp, while also allowing this heathen army to reach them silently. By the time Madara would realize the threat, it would all be over. Danzo, Mikoto, warn Madara now, commanded Tobirama, his eyes fixed on the white-haired Otsutsuki marching behind the army of S. Danzo nodded, but Mikoto hesitated, knowing very well what Tobirama was planning to do. She had no doubt about his prowess, for he was the second most powerful ninja of their army after Madara. Her hesitation didn't go unnoticed as Tobirama reared back and glared at her. Run, you fools. Danzo grabbed Mikoto by the shoulder and started dragging her way. Mikoto cast one last glance backwards as Tobirama unleashed his holy sword and walked forward. She had failed in her mission, but there was no time to lament, with death marching for them all. You are a good man, Tobirama, she said sadly, making the Senju glance back at her. No, I am not. He walked away with those words, leaving Mikoto and Danzo to make a mad dash towards their army camp to warn their comrades of the impending approach of the army of S and Otsutsuki. The army of S had been charging through the sandstorms without any trouble when they were suddenly forced to stop by their masters. The four Otsutsuki emerged from the rear ranks as they felt the immense power marching towards them. Just one look at the thundering clouds was enough to show the energy build up. Had Zetsu failed, the creature was supposed to corrupt Tobirama and make the man launch an inner coup, allowing the Otsutsuki to finish the shinobi army when it was torn apart. Zetsu had plagued Tobirama's body for months now and had infested his brain with thoughts of mercenary armies coming to his aid, where in truth those armies were those of the Otsutsuki, who would everyone, including both Uchiha and Senju. But watching Tobirama stand in front of them with a menacing glare was enough to convey that Zetsu had failed. It could very well be possible that the ancient creature had perished. Kill him, commanded the lead Otsutsuki. The army of S charged forward at their command, having no sense of self-preservation, for if they had, then they wouldn't be running towards a man having the intent of a many-tailed beast. And certainly not the one holding Ashura's blade in his hand. Sheer cold fury spread across Tobirama's eyes as he saw his enemies charging at him. He raised his holy sword high in the air, making the clouds cackle thunderously. You shall not pass. His Walkyrie, combined with the chakra released from his body, merged with his sword that sent a beam of energy straight into the raging clouds. Blinding light descended from the dark skies, shrouding every living creature in the vast desert. The Otsutsuki had to urgently take cover behind their massive reanimated scorpions, and even their powerful eyes were blinded, and they felt the sand beneath their feet tremble as the land was rocked with a monstrous explosion. Ashes and fire were all they saw when they emerged from their cover, along with the charred remains of nearly 4,000 of their minions. Not a trace of them was left in this world except for ash, and that too disappeared in the scorched desert. Heavy rains fell from the dark clouds, along with random bolts of lightning that incinerated anyone unfortunate enough to get in its way. From the field of smoke came a volley of fluttering paper shards, and the Otsutsuki were forced to take cover again as the explosives on the paper went off, shredding even more ranks of their forces. By the time they emerged from their cover, they saw Tobirama charging towards their army with his holy sword. Release the beasts, commanded the lead Otsutsuki. The group of scorpions roared as they charged forward towards the lone Senju warrior, and if possible Tobirama's cold smirk became even more dangerous. The scorpions raised their tails, unleashing several hundred needles laced with their poison at Tobirama, only for the man to disappear in a quick flash. Before anyone could understand what happened, the Senju reappeared below one of the beasts and jabbed his lightning blade clean through. The scorpion roared in agony and violently lashed out with its tail at its two comrades nearby, sending them flying away. Emerging from the corpse, Tobirama saw two more scorpions furiously open their mouths, launching a wave of poisonous smoke right at him. His hands weaved through a set of hand seals rapidly, and he focused his attention on the two sources of energy that had unleashed the poisonous smoke and were now standing behind it. Water style, water bullets. His sensory abilities didn't betray him, and the telltale sounds of twin scorpions screaming in agony told him that he had hit the targets. The blind scorpions now rampaged wildly through their own army, scores of warriors, as they tried to stem back the pain at the loss of their eyes. The rains were falling heavily from the skies, allowing Tobirama enough sauce to make his next move, as he was now being swarmed by warriors from all sides. Is this what you had to face, little brother? Water style, water wall. He unleashed a massive tidal wave in all four directions that sent hundreds of warriors tumbling away, unable to match the force that was nature. Still more and more charged at him, but he was ready for them. Harashan. Soon enough the desert battlefield was glowing with bright white flashes as Tobirama operated across distances, wreaking havoc on the surprised warriors. For all their mighty numbers, they were too slow and no match for the power of Ashura's sword that burned them alive instantly and freed the twisted souls. Combine that with Tobirama's speed, quick reflexes and rational thinking unleashed across the battlefield. Most of the enemy scorpions were either badly injured or went berserk. Thousands of warriors were literally evaporated on Tobirama's lone lightning strike, and hundreds more joined them, with each passing minute being down by the Senju swordsmanship and lethal water ninjutsu. Tobirama kept the monsters at bay, knowing very well that he could not allow them to reach Madara anytime soon. It was easier said than done, and he had to repeatedly force the warriors from surrounding him. Even so, for all his power and talents, Tobirama was bound by mortality. The were not. His inner battle with Zetsu had tired him to a degree, but he kept the hordes of at bay for 20 long minutes before fatigue started to catch up to him. Using Harashan repeatedly took a toll on his muscles. Firing devastating ninjutsu ate away at his chakra reserves, no matter how large they were, and every time he fought the one or two managed to land blows on his body through the sheer numbers. Yet his fury burned brightly than ever. The humiliation that the Zetsu and Otsutsuki wanted to put him and his people through encouraged him to fight on. He ducked and raised his sword in time, blocking the dozens more swords from the warriors. With a roar, he pushed, making them go flying away. Rajan no Ken was in a total 360-degree angle, severing dozens more heads from B. Seeing more about to pounce on him, Tobirama used his teleportation technique once more. He had barely touched the sand and was preparing to fight more again when he felt the attack coming. He twisted backwards and raised his sword. His was L. Surprised, he stared at the long white-shaped spear lodged clean through his upper V. He coughed B from his lips as his knees threatened to fall apart, but the sight of warriors charging at him again made him snarl. Tobirama unleashed dozens of water bullets, mercilessly severing heads from B while he charged forward and started apart as many enemies as he could with the help of his sword. There were so many of them, so many attacks coming from all sides, so many to counter against. He never heard the whistling sound in the air, but did buckle painfully when one more similar spear his back. As he turned around, he caught sight of the ones who hurt him just in time as one more spear his heart. Tobirama felt the last of his strength fade as he fell to his knees. He couldn't breathe properly, pain flooded through his entire body and his vision started to darken. B leaked from his body like a raging river, and hazily he saw the army of part as the Otsutsuki warriors who struck him down approached. He watched them come forward. The four white-haired bastards with their smug looks raised their white-shaped spears around him. Tobirama saw the other three staring at the one in the center with deference, which could only mean he was the leader of this army. A thin smile came on his lips. Rajan no Ken fell from his hands and the four Otsutsuki spears his mercilessly. A silent scream left his lips. Yet through the fog of agony, he again grabbed his sword, much to the shocked Otsutsuki's horror. Rajan no Ken unleashed massive bolts of lightning that struck two of the Otsutsuki, sending them crashing away. Tobirama, still lodged with the spears in his body, roared as he grabbed the spear of the leading Otsutsuki and yanked it forwards, forcing the man to come crashing towards him. The stunned warrior could not even unleash a scream as Tobirama held his sword through the man's brain and reduced him to ashes. The army of S screamed as its leader was M, and the last Otsutsuki, still standing, screeched in hatred as he raised his spear, this time to sever Tobirama's head from his shoulders. Tobirama closed his eyes, waiting for the inevitable final blow. Time lost its meaning as Tobirama now fell gracelessly to the ground. His thoughts were jarred and confusing, but he was still alive. He heard an inhuman scream roar across the skies, followed by thousands of battle cries. Through his hazy vision, he saw a sight he had never seen before. In the dark skies, he saw a strange monster. It had the face of a demonic bull with two large horns. Its body was strangely in the shape of a man, but marred in dark shadows and scorching flames. Two large dark wings made of just shadows that were even barely visible were carrying the creature through the dark skies. Its inhuman screech made the lone Otsutsuki take several steps back as the beast's demonic red eyes narrowed down on him. When it opened its monstrous mouth, a wave of dark fire was unleashed across the desert. Uruloki, whispered the Otsutsuki warrior in terror. Tobirama did not know the meaning of that word, but he did see the Otsutsuki turn tail and run, grabbing one of his fallen comrades with him. The other injured one tried to get up but was soon engulfed in dark flames unleashed by the creature. K them all. The roars of thousands of enraged shinobi filled the air as an army of ninjas made up from the land of fire and even wind as well as earth joined the battle. Scores of the disorganized warriors. But most devastating was the creature of fire and darkness. Uruloki. What a strange name, Tobirama could not help but think as his life ebb drained from him. Yet it was a satisfying sight to watch that dark creature turn the battlefield into a field of fire, burning thousands of warriors mercilessly. Tobirama was quite surprised to see Madara standing inside that creature, and his eyes were full of anger as well as hate. These bastards had Kei the Uchiha's last brother, and tonight they were truly going to face the wrath of a dragon. Tobirama himself felt satisfied to watch the Kei of his own brother be butchered under Madara's wrath. It was poetic justice. Karma was a real bee. He didn't know how long he lay in the bee sand, but slowly the sounds of battle started to fade. The screams became less and less frequent until one roar of victory was unleashed in the desert by the living as they vanquished the S. His breathing was getting erratic and his eyes were moist from the unbearable pain coursing through his shattered body when he heard the hurried footsteps. He was forced to open his eyes fully when he felt someone touch his cheek gingerly. Is it over? Asked Tobirama tiredly, coughing at the man before him. Madara sadly watched the state Tobirama was left in, and he didn't know why it made his heart clench in pain. Tobirama didn't deserve this. Yes, answered Madara honestly, as his Mangekyo Sharingan saw the worry in Tobirama's gaze. Did Mikoto and Danzo make it? Questioned Tobirama painfully. To his relief, the two young warriors were standing nearby with Mikoto crying as Danzo and Kakashi held her. It brought a faint smile to his lips. Sasuke Sarutobi came running forward along with Rei Namikaze and froze at the state Tobirama was in. Rei placed a hand on the Sarutobi's shoulder and saw his eyes moisten up. Did you stop the traitors? Asked Tobirama tiredly, his voice barely above a whisper. Your warning saved us all. Sasuke helped me imprison Hiro, Tori and Hayate along with their supporters. We stopped the coup before it started, and Mikoto warned us about the enemy, allowing us time to prepare. You saved us all, Tobirama. Now let us do the same, urged Madara, as he tried to lift the senju only to have the young man resist his attempt. Leave it. It is over. Madara did not want to hear those words, nor did he want to see the regretful look in Tobirama's eyes. He looked at Rei for help, but she only shook her head. The world of men will fall, and the Otsutsuki shall bring darkness to this world. I've ruined us all, lamented Tobirama. If only he had been strong enough to resist Zetsu, if only he had been able to discern the Otsutsuki's plans beforehand, then his brother would not be today. Their king would still be alive, and soon it wouldn't be a widow. Madara wouldn't have lost his last brother. Tears fell from his eyes as he realized the grief he had brought to his loved ones, and it was about to fill his heart with regret and pain when Madara grabbed his cheeks. Tobirama looked into those dark eyes so full of anger and grim determination. I will stop them no matter what. I will not let this world fall, nor let our people promised Madara sincerely. Tobirama's eyes widened on hearing those words, and he felt relief flood through him when he saw the sincerity in Madara's eyes. Uchiha and Senju. Our people? Asked Tobirama happily, making Madara smile grimly. Our people. A relieved but proud smile appeared on Tobirama's lips as his trembling hands grasped his holy sword. Madara's eyes widened when the young Senju offered him his prized sword. Tobirama, said Madara, unable to hide his shock, but the Senju still smiled as he placed the sword in Madara's hands. I am glad I followed you, my brother. My Hokage. My king. Life vanished from Tobirama's body, yet his proud and moist eyes still stared at Madara, making a lone tear fall from the Hokage's eyes. With trembling hands, Madara closed the young Senju's open eyes and respectfully took the holy sword offered to him. Regret and guilt flooded his heart as he glanced at Tobirama's lifeless body. Now we both don't have any brothers left, Hashirama. He could not help but remember how hostile and tense Tobirama had been at the start of this war. Yet for some reason, he had supported Madara to the point that they both started trusting each other. Madara would never deny the fact that his victories were achieved many times due to Tobirama's support and shrewd thinking. They both had the differences, but the love for their people and siblings had kept them together. It was that same feeling that made Tobirama warn Madara about the coup. Even though a foul creature corrupted him, Tobirama held onto his code and didn't allow his conflicted emotions to harm his people. In many ways, Tobirama was like him. Cynical, cold-hearted, determined, brave, and loyal. Be at peace, son of Ashura, whispered Madara respectfully. The Hokage finally got up from the ground and looked at the warriors surrounding him. Even the now freed warriors from Land of Wind and Earth were stunned after the enemy they just fought. It was no longer ninja against ninja, nation against nation, but men against death. Madara saw not just the Senjus and their supporters but also Uchihas, Namikas and Shimura glancing at Tobirama with sadness and pride. Hashirama, you wanted me to build the village of our dreams for our siblings. But now they are all gone and yet we must fight on. The Hokage glanced at his fighters, both new and old, whispering the ancient words of the Uchiha to give them hope in this dark hour. From the ashes we shall rise again, promised Madara fiercely, as he raised Raijin no Ken. He was glad to see his army raise their own swords in respect and agreement. There were no cheers for this victory, for they all knew it was far from over. Mikoto and Rei came forward and respectfully took away Tobirama's body, soon to be cremated. Madara would make sure that the Senju's ashes and sword reached his family no matter what. If Shisui's warning was accurate, then the enemy was currently ravaging across the Land of Fire, with Madara's father the last opposition standing in their way. Naruto and Naori were so were many of the Uchiha fighters. The Senjus were not much different, for they too had suffered equal losses. Madara had a grim feeling that by the time this war ended, the sons of Indra and Ashura would perish. But none of those possibilities mattered anymore. With his brother he was the highest-ranking leader still left alive, and he had an army that his nation dearly needed in this hour of need. As Hokage, it was his duty to protect them even to his death. Even the warriors from Land of Wind and Earth knew this threat was grave enough to set the differences aside, because if the Land of Fire was destroyed, then sooner or later the Otsutsuki would come for them as well, and they would not be able to stop those monsters. It was better to stand united than fall divided. They all looked at the first Hokage as he made his decision. Let's go home. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.